All right, you guys ready? All right, well, this morning's guest, today's speaker, is one of our very own here at Sunrise. He is part of the internship and actually training in seminary for ministry and other things. He has a ministry known as Don't Let Them Burn that he's had now since the fall of 2014, where he covers many topics, many controversial topics, such as exposing Hollywood, prophecy, the corrupt music industry and all their satanic blasphemies, and of course demonic deception, and even especially with the music industry. I was on with him at one time exposing my own life, the death metal and that stuff. So really good ministry there at Don't Let Them Burn. He's also a graphics designer and has done several of the covers for Pastor Billy's Studies and Get a Life Media. If you've ever gotten the DVDs, a lot of that artwork is from Chris. That's another part of his ministry. He's also a musician, and him and his daughter Nikita, who's right here and sung earlier for us with a beautiful voice, they did a song for one of Pastor Billy's studies entitled Genetic Apocalypse. He is currently working on a book as well entitled Hollywood Matrix Cinema Decoded, which is due sometime, Lord willing, this year. That's 2022. No pressure, Chris. We're already in May, going to June. Time's getting short, brother, if the rapture doesn't happen first. But as you all well know, our guest speaker today is Chris Taylor. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Thank you, brother. All right. Thanks for the warm welcome. Seems we got some technical things going on here. All right. So, again, thanks for the warm welcome. And today's topic is going to be a little sensitive, but we're all mature here, so I think we can handle it. One thing I've noticed doing all this research and studying the Bible and whatnot is there's certain things you can't get wrong. And one of them is who Jesus is, the doctrine of salvation, more, and the doctrine of creation, really. So if we get creation wrong, it goes downhill from there, because God created us for him, and we get to enjoy his creation. So before we get into the subject, again, Don't Let Them Burn my ministry, and these are the places you can find me. I'm all over the place, social media, whatever, YouTube, Odyssey, YouTube. But follow me on Telegram and Gab for the most part, but YouTube is the hub of this is where everybody really congregates to watch my stuff. So if you're interested, check us out there. Telegram, I post stuff almost every day that's not being broadcasted on YouTube because of all the censorship. So today's topic is the theory that provokes hate, Black Lives Matter, and critical race theory. And we got through most of this in the first service, so I think we can get through it all in this service. So again, creation, right? God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and he rested on the seventh. And God also created Adam. But let's go through a little bit of Genesis 1 here. And God said, "Let us make man in our own image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in its own image, and that doesn't necessarily mean our humanoid form, but we can't get into all that today. In the image of God created he him, created them, male and female. So a lot of people, they want to know what Adam looked like. I've thought about it often, and the answer has been in our face the whole time. We just didn't look in Hebrew. So here in the constable's notes, this is part of our study in theology class. It says Adam comes from the Hebrew word earth. Adamah. Adam means one that is red like the earth. So the people out there that are saying, oh, well, Adam was black and Eve was black and we came from, no, or any other color. He was red, like the earth, right? Likewise, the name of the animals probably expressed the nature of each animal. Names of humans in Old Testament times usually reflected the nature of the persons who bore them. This indicates that Adam must have had great intelligence and wisdom to be able to identify and label the various types of animals according to their nature. Then we get to the fall. Most of us know what happened. Lucifer, he beguiled Eve, or, he used lyrical sorcery. That's what I call it, right? And he presented a false view of God, and lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, the pride of life came in, and she made the wrong choice. Give me a second here. All right, so Adam and Eve wanted equality. Pay attention to this because it's relevant later. I'm not going to bring these words up too much, but Adam and Eve wanted equality and equity, redistribution of knowledge with God. They wanted to be like him. This stemming from the lies and sorcery of Satan. There was an inversion in their minds and of the character of God. God became the bad guy, and Satan became the one to set them free from God's law with illumination of the mind. This idea would birth what's called Gnosticism. This is the religion, Gnosticism, gnosis meaning knowledge. This religion is on secret knowledge. So when you see the word occult, it means secret. It's birthed from Gnosticism and other schools of thought. Later in history, around the time of the early church, this is what Paul had to fight against, because it was rising up rather quickly after he went and the letters went out and he went to these places. Gnosticism would try to take its place. And so people were getting fooled that there was another gospel, and which was false, and they were accursed if they were to preach it. So then we have the flood. The world became violent and wicked. Angels took wives for themselves and had hybrid offsprings. The imagination of men was continually evil, but one genealogy remained pure and also honored God. Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives, 8 people on the boat with the land animals that God brought to Noah to repopulate the earth. God's judgment was solidified. He shut the door of the ark, and the rest is biblical history. So around the world, most civilizations have the account of Noah. They might not say Noah, they might say NOE or something like that, but it's verified once you do the research. The flood is history. Then we get to the Tower of Babel. When you fast forward, this is about 150 to 200 years after the flood, and witchcraft became the thing again. The mode of operation, basically what we would call today the do what thou wilt mentality. This is where you see people like Aleister Crowley and a lot of Satanists and whatnot. They're telling people to do what you want, follow your heart. All those things came from Satanism. So this mentality rises again, and mankind, through the leadership of Nimrod, wanted to reach the heavens for various reasons, but ultimately it led to another judgment from God. And so we have an account here with the Tower of Babel. I'm not going to read all of it. It says the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And down there, I guess it says, "Lest we be scattered." They didn't want to be scattered abroad on the earth. God came down and saw what they were doing. Of course, he didn't have to come down. He sees everything. But the Bible is giving you illustrations for your finite mind. And it says, "Nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do." And that's where the world is going today. We're opening the doors to all sort of genetic manipulation, all sorts of sexual depravity, and on and on and on it goes. And all of this is going to be relevant as we go on. So then it says, "So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of the earth, and they left off to build a city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth." Right? So why the judgment? It explains the various languages. It explains what in this paper says races, but humanity only has one race. It also many thinkers labor under the illusion that evolution is an empirical science, which is fact. Which in fact is a philosophy. I would add that it's a religion. The Bible story demonstrates the inclination of fallen man to rebel against God and try to provide for his needs in its own way rather than by trusting and obeying God. It illustrates the rebellion against God results in broken fellowship with God and man and failure to realize God's intention for man in his creation, namely that he rule the earth effectively. It provides historical background for what follows in Genesis. Abraham came from this area, or of the Chaldees. Most of the Bible takes place in the Middle East. So, as far as race, for instance, if you live in India, your depictions of humans will be more likely reflected on your culture. This goes for every culture. Egypt, for instance, had a multi-pigmented society illustrated in the hieroglyphic. In fact, some people out there said, oh, well, all Egypt was black and we were once kings and all this stuff. But in reality, there were only 2 black kings that I remember, and they invaded. So Egypt was always multicultural. You look at the hieroglyphics, you got all shades on there. So, some want to claim that the human race started in Africa, mainly Ethiopia, about 200,000 years ago. That's an evolutionary mindset. Then we migrated as our DNA mutated and developed. We developed, the skin tones developed. They were correct about the migration in DNA and skin tones, but they were missing 3 key ingredients. The Garden of Eden was located in Iraq, otherwise known as Mesopotamia. The flood of Noah, Mount Ararat, is the highest mountain in Turkey, and that's where the ark resided as the waters receded. The flood also wiped out the Garden of Eden, if you're wondering. It's not around. Many people think it's still around, but it's not. The Tower of Babel was in the plain of Shinar, or Shinar, depending on how you want to pronounce that, also located in Iraq. There are talks right now about continuing the rebuilding of the great city Babylon, but that's for another time. Now, also, the historical dates of the earth, as far as creation scientists go, it's around 6,000 years old, not 200,000, not 6 million, not a billion years old, as the evolutionary mindset would try to tell you. As far as skin tones, in any culture, we've branched out and migrated many times. Based on tribes and mixing of tribes, we see color variations in all cultures. Archaeology, the Bible, and other historical sources establish this truth. Science shows that the lighter skin tone is based on what's called albinism. You have albinism 1 and albinism 2. Albinism 2 is where you get the albinos with the yellow hair, and albinism 1 is what we have in here. So, and this does not mean that the darker skin tone is superior. It's just a matter of DNA and genetics and all that. And as I pointed out before, history did not start in Africa, so that smashes that idea. Another note about multiple races is the Bible declares an obvious fact. We are all one race and one blood. The evolutionary theory, or the religion of evolution, has espoused that we all came from bioorganisms, so therefore the color deviations are results of humanity sprouting up all over the world. That's why you get the term races. Okay? So in Acts 17:26, it says, and he made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwelling. So you're not here by accident, right? As evolution also says. Most of the time you hear races, you can supplement it with the word evolution. In myth, though, like, fantasy or whatnot, it's a different story because, artists recreate things and whatnot, different races, elves and orcs and all sorts of stuff like that. So this is just a short history on slavery. So the word slavery or slave, it didn't really occur in the Bible as we know it today. It was the Slavic people that were enslaved and that's slave. That's where the word came from. They were highly enslaved, and so your ethnicity, your nationality, your culture has zero to do with color. Your ethnicity, your nationality, and your culture has nothing to do with color. These wicked people want you to hyper focus on color. So these things are better suited to people groups. The Jews were captive in Egypt, in Babylon. As the world continued to develop, conquering nations resulted in death and slavery. Although some of those occupations resulted in assimilation, people would enslave all over the known world for various reasons. You had Viking slavery, Irish slavery, Asian slavery, dark-skinned slavery. Not all slavery was shackled. Some slaves were bondservants, like we are to Jesus, or today we call them maids. They are technically slaves, you know? One of the major slave industries rose in Persia, and the people that propagate all of this racial tension won't mention this because it destroys their narrative. It was the Iranian slave trade that took a lot of us from Africa. It wasn't just the Europeans and the British and all this stuff. It was the Persians. They, as far as the numbers go, maybe 200 million of us died as far as the whole slave thing within their control. In fact, so I covered that. Today, the biggest slaves are sex trafficked women and children, but men too, and also exported from African nations. Yes, in 2022, we have slavery going on in Africa. So where's Black Lives Matter? Where's the feminists? Where's the protest? There's none. So that's enough on that topic. And we're going to go to this is Plato's Republic. Pretty much what Plato had in his book was what we think of today as socialism. So it didn't start with Karl Marx. It just came down the line of thinkers. So he said, I had to cut out a lot. So here, they set up a system, and then what happened, debauchery and stuff started coming in, and so now he's talking about the family and the political structure. And so he says, can liberty have any limit? Certainly not. By degrees, the anarchy finds a way into private houses. That's what's happening today. The son is on a level with his father. He's having no respect or reverence for either his parents, and this is his freedom. They will have no one over them. The leaders deprive the rich of their estates and distribute them among the people, at the same time taking care to reserve the larger part for themselves. This is what the Democrats want. This is what the socialists want. That's their plan. When you hear distribution of wealth, pay your fair share, and all this stuff, it's all this, okay? Democracy, of which the insatiable desire brings her to desolation. All the debauchery seen coming in. This is talking about now children and whatnot. When the philosophers' kings are born in a state, they will set in order their own city. They will take possession of the children who will be unaffected by the habits of their parents. These they will train in their own habits and laws. We want one single grand lie which will be believed by everyone or everybody. That's what they're doing today. They're getting the kids from young, and what are they doing? Teaching them their own nasty habits in the kindergarten, in elementary, all this stuff. So, I hope that's clear. I got this from this book, Socialism: The Real History from Plato to the Present, How the Deep State Capitalizes on Crisis to Consolidate Control. Now, I knew about Plato before I read this book, but this book has so much great stuff in it. You want to check that out. Now, okay, so now we're going to go to the Enlightenment period through 17th and 18th centuries. Some ideas exploded at this period, but we can't go through all of them. So we're going to jump to the 1800s to the 1900s, where modernism came in between 1890 and 1950. This is where we got Charles Darwin, evolution, Karl Marx, and let's go to Karl Marx for a second. He's a Satanist. He is a Satanist. Okay, it says here, thus heaven I forfeited, I know it full well. My soul once true to God is chosen for hell. Okay? And he was born in a Christian family, but he was Jewish. So it's all sorts of stuff going on in his background that he probably hated. Some atheists, I don't believe they're no real atheists, but here we go, right? And then, this is before he died. He said, get out of here and leave me alone. Last words are for fools who haven't said enough already, right? So he's not looking for an afterlife. They all think that when you die, you're gone, and that's it, right? So these are 3 books you might want to check out. Was Karl Marx a Satanist, The Devil and Karl Marx, Marx and Satan by Richard Wurmbrand. He's a Christian that went through the Russian prison system, and he wrote a bunch of books after his torture. You might want to check him out too. So from there we get the Communist Confession of Faith. That's his first title for his book, The Communist Manifesto. So he has a faith, and it's Satanism. Humanism comes in from Marx and others. This started a Gnostic cult, humanized garden. That's one of the terms for it. And so then you have the Victorian occult explosion in 1837 to 1901, and this is where you get all sorts of wickedness: Theosophy, Helena Blavatsky, the Golden Dawn, the Vril. This was one of the controlling agents for Hitler and others. You get Aleister Crowley, who is the dark magician that had relations with men, women, and children. He even ate things that we shouldn't eat, and I won't mention them. Antonio Gramsci from 1891 to 1937. This is where we get the term social justice, and we'll get to that in a minute. We also have Mussolini, who the one that created fascism. Okay. Then we get into postmodernism. This is a way to transform society and get rid of the norms. Okay. And the communist impact in totality is over 100 million people dead. So they always want blood, okay? And then by the 1940s, you get the Nazis and the Frankfurt School. You might recognize some of the faces in that collage there, but if it's too small, you got Freud and all sorts of weird people in there. So the Frankfurt School of Socialism, known more appropriately as critical theory, okay, is a philosophical and sociological movement spread across many universities around the world. It was originally located at the Institute for Social Research, an attached institute at the Goethe University of Frankfurt, Germany. The institute was founded in 1923 thanks to a donation from Felix Weil with the aim of developing Marxist studies in Germany. Germany wasn't taken over by Marxism, okay? After 1933, the Nazis forced its closure, and the institute was moved to the United States, where it found hospitality at Columbia University in New York. That's why it started spreading. Not the only reason it started spreading, but one of the major reasons it started spreading here. Slowly, though. Slowly. The academic influence of the critical method is for researching some of the key issues and philosophical preoccupations of the school involved the critique of modernity in capitalist society, the definition of social emancipation, as well as detection of the pathologies of society. Critical theory provides a specific interpretation of Marxist philosophy with regards to some of its central economic and political notions like commodification, reification, fetishization, and critique of mass culture. That fetishization, that's what you're seeing today, okay? Some weird stuff. So in modern times in America, we had many issues. Pretty much we got over most of our racial problems, but they were in small little pockets around the country. And so by the time we hit the late 80s and the early 90s, we started unifying until the Rodney King incident. But after that, a lot of fires had gone out. So in the mid-90s to mid-2000s, we had the most unity we ever had in America. Then we got our first black president, who was a Marxist and with obvious ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. Many refuse to see it as such, and if you speak about it, you're called a racist, right? That's one of the marks of neo-Marxism. They have to label you all the time the stuff that you're not, so they could stop you from rising up against them. So cultural Marxism is one of the main weaponized system that builds into a color revolution. A color revolution is where they get to topple governments through the CIA and media. They turn the media against the people, and that's what we're going through now. Many people just can't see it that way. So please research that. So some of the symbolisms. Okay, first, terms I hate. And this is not all of them, I just hit two. Afro-American, that was around the 70s. I don't have an afro. I think it's just a nonsensical term. Pretty obvious, right? Then we have African-American, and this is used, oh my gosh, ad nauseum. I'm a Jamaican American. I was born in Jamaica, and I migrated here to Florida and lived the rest of my life. And I got naturalized in, I think, 1999. And so if a Caucasian, Asian, or whoever, an Indian, immigrates from Africa, are they not African American? Makes sense, right? Black, I'm brown. I'm not black, right? But they designate other people who are lighter shades of brown as the only class that can be called brown people, right? It's ridiculous and conforms our minds to the way they want us to think. It's so ingrained in us that we end up using the terms anyway, right? So always define the terms, what they mean by them, and we'll probably touch that a little bit more. So speaking of term, you have to define all the terms. Progressive doesn't mean what you think it means. Progressive means progressing towards Marxism and communism. Change we can believe in means revolution. They want to change the face of America. Cultural appropriation, you have a lot of people online saying, oh, well, this person stole our braids, our food, or whatever. It's just hyper stupidness. And it's just ridiculous because, okay, in Jamaica, we had white, black, Indian, Asian, everybody, and we got along, and we even intermixed and all this stuff. It didn't matter. It comes to America, it was a different story, at least in some places. And so we get to hyper focus on color and all this stuff. It makes no sense because, hey, I love some oxtail and some curry chicken, but I'll eat some Italian food. I'll eat some Mexican food. I do not care. Okay? So, also on a small note about music, around the late 70s, early 80s, I was introduced to what they call hip hop. And hip hop is not music, it's a culture. Rap is the music from the culture. So when you hear hip hop music, it's nonsensical. The culture has 9 pillars, and it's about the b-boying, the DJing, the rapping, and all this stuff, and the immoral lifestyle. So that's why you hear so much of that stuff in the music. But one of the foundations of hip hop is Islam. Many people don't know that. But they also promote communism and socialism, heavy. Just like Hollywood is doing today, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. So I want to park right here before we get to Black Lives Matter. What's known as the communist black fist, it always symbolizes revolution. It's not always just the black fist, right? You've seen some of these all over the place, even in some of your stores and online communities that you didn't think were communists or they would promote communism, okay? That's Lenin up there. And Che Guevara, the guy in the middle, you got these all over the shirts. I had friends that would wear this thing and, oh yeah, man, he's a great guy. Yeah, he killed a lot of people, right? You have Antifa there. We'll get to Antifa later. They've been around since Russia and Germany, the World War I, World War II. It's not new. Many people think it's brand new. And I remember they had a commercial saying that Antifa stormed the beaches of Normandy. Huh? Historical revisionism is one of their key aspects to get this thing flowing in America. And you got this, you have back in 1968, you had the Black Fist, and now you got emojis on your phone helping you to promote communism. And of course, there you have Bernie Sanders, a hardened communist, Black Lives Matter, Black Power, the Black National, all this stuff, right? But what's peculiar, and I don't know how much this is actually connected, but it's very interesting. This is from Egypt. And so this is the, notice he's taking a knee too, what they do in the football games and all this stuff, right? So you got the god Horus in the middle there, and so the ones at the on the each side is Nekhen and Pe, something like that, and they would be it's a form of ancestor worship. So these ancestors would come next to the deity to kind of usher them off into their burial place, the pharaohs and stuff like that. That's what that's linking to. Right. So let me see here. Socialism is a transitional system from capitalism to communism, all right? They have something called repressive tolerance, which is to pre-censor you or censor you. Repressive tolerance. Anyway, all the censorship going on is through this system. And if you didn't know that, man, you got to get up on some of this history. Let's see. They want a new morality, new sensibility that one can operate in society and will desire. They will, because something's going so bad, they want a new reality, and that's what they're giving you through some of the not all, but some of the virtual reality and stuff like Mark Zuckerberg. People are going to beg for a solution, and what they're going to get is an antichrist, right? So their first target is what they call the oppressed groups, ghetto populations, activists, movements like Black Liberation, Black Panthers, Black Power, Black Nationalists, Black Feminists, and so forth. They've infiltrated those a long time ago. They operate under what I call linguistic sorcery and academic sorcery, because they hide everything in the words, right? And if you study witchcraft at all, or spell casting, that's what they do. A spell isn't putting frog legs in a pot. It's speaking words so that they can come into existence. The Secret, NLP, law of attraction, all that stuff is from witchcraft, okay? So one way that they capture people is in their hyper-emotional state, where the person or group can't think rationally. A lot of them are fatherless or looking for affirmation, love, and identity, but the love of the world won't cure their illness. They're reminded of issues that happened in the past, meaning like slavery and stuff. Then a straw man is built based on incidents that happened in their lifetime within their culture to create an emotional trap. The trap is used later to cause division. It works every time on the gullible, simple-minded, and those susceptible to brainwashing. It doesn't matter how book smart they are. But many Marxists are highly intelligent people. So, okay, so I was told by someone that's very credible that when they were in the New Age, what they would do is set up these conferences, and they admitted that all of these slavery movies were to keep us divided. And now they're ramping it up every year, at least 2 or 3, either it's on the streaming service, mostly on the streaming services now, or in the theater. So, Black Lives Matter, the scam of Black Lives Matter. BLM was founded in 2013 and claims to want to fight racism based on systemic societal issues, one being police killing of the Black community. Not all these incidents are what you think they are. A lot of them are fake, and there were true criminals in those incidents. George Floyd was the ignition switch or flashpoint to bring BLM to real prominence. BLM is heavily funded by foundations belonging to George Soros and others. They're also promoted by corporations and charities that yielded a massive donation of over $19 million to an organization that truly don't care about Black lives. In fact, the year of George Floyd, I was playing Call of Duty, and I hadn't played it for a while. I jumped on, and all of a sudden, Black Lives Matter. I'm like, whoa, what's this? It's my video game. I'm supposed to be free from the world. This thing is creeping into the video games. I'm like, wow. It's just like the Russia, and what's the other country's name? Ukraine narrative. It's the same thing. So they want you to get you cycle through the next thing and the next thing and the next thing until you've lost your mind. These people, the same lady here, have purchased a lot of mansions. But what I'm going to give you right now is some things from their own words, their words.
It's a fact that Saul Alinsky dedicated his book, Rules for Radicals, to Lucifer. People are celebrating Satan in the way that many of us Christians celebrate God. And so, it's about Black people, their suffering, and their agenda being used to further a cause that's much bigger. And it is the Marxist socialism, the cultural Marxism, that they are making promises to Blacks and other groups that are disenfranchised or poor, but it takes us back to the same failed Marxist socialist goals.
We actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists.
Patrisse Cullors, the one you just heard there saying that she's a trained Marxist and that she and other BLM co-founders are trained Marxists, he said, quote, "I'm calling for spirituality to be deeply radical. We're not just having a social justice movement. This is a spiritual movement."
Maybe I'm sharing too much, but we become very intimate with the spirits that we call on regularly, right? Like each of them seems to have a different presence and personality. I laugh a lot with Waukesha, and I didn't meet her in her body, right? I met her through this work.
Dr. Abdullah and Patrisse Cullors talks about summoning the spirits of the dead, using the power of the spirits of the dead in order to give them the ability to do what they're calling the so-called justice work. You're going to find that what they're describing is their adherence to the Yoruba religion of Ifa or Ifa.
I started to feel personally connected and responsible and accountable to them, both from a deeply political place, but also from a deeply spiritual place.
Now, in case you're wondering who that is speaking, that is Patrisse Cullors, co-founder of the Black Lives Matter organization, the same one you just heard saying we are trained Marxists.
Say their names. We do that all the time, that you kind of invoke that spirit, and then those spirits actually become present with you.
Now, y'all see all of this, the NBA, all on the jersey, say her name. They're not doing what you think they're doing. You think they're just honoring people. They are conjuring up spirits.
So when we say it's a spiritual battle, it is. These women, these Marxists, who tell you we don't want men to have testicles, we don't want to have a Black family. How could you say you're a bigger enemy of humans or Black people than to say we are here to destroy the family? That is their maxim.
80% of abortion clinics in America are in minority neighborhoods. Over 22,500,000 Black babies have been aborted in 50 years. Over 22,500,000 Black babies have been aborted in 50 years.
You cannot say Black Lives Matter and then kill yourselves.
And you look at the spell they've got over people that have taken on this, just murder the police, murder innocent people, shoot people at checkpoints, burn things down, go into restaurants and attack people because of what color they are. And these women conducting their little white magic rituals out in the open like Irina Baranovich does, but then the black magic is done internally. I mean, these are just arrogant, slob-like jokes. But they've got the power of Soros, who is a dark magician of the highest order, behind them.
That's true. This is the same guy, he's Jewish, and he sold out his people to the Nazi Party. So money is funneled through a gateway called Act Blue. You want to check that out if you want to do some research. And they funnel the money to other organizations, some being Colors of Change, another one being Sunrise. Sunrise grooms high school students to be shields when it comes to these riots and other things too. Not all adherents understand what they're supporting, especially since a lot of them are under mental arrest through brainwashing and an emotional entanglement that they aren't aware of. So a sample of BLM's itinerary involves getting rid of the nuclear family, pushing the agenda of the alphabet people, LG, the rest, claiming to want better education, meaning Marxist indoctrination, abolishing the police. Basically, they want lawlessness. BLM is promoted as and defended by the mainstream media and corporations that push Marxism as a good thing for the people, especially minorities. The Democratic Party and the Rhinos, a Republican in name only, support them. As a side note, the Democratic Party has a long history of being the most racist of the two parties. This is undeniable once you do the research. Black Lives Matter, as seen in the video, witchcraft, divination, sorcery is from the African culture. They said they're using African culture from the sorcery that they practice. The religion stems from the Yoruba religion of Nigeria, also known as Orisha, Santeria, or Voodoo, and it has other names. Right? So it's all the same thing. They do something called a libation, which consist of pouring water out, offering to the false gods. BLM also calls on the spirits of the dead, like you saw in the video. So when you hear them say your name, say your name, they say it in front of restaurants and whatnot. You get the point. You saw the video. They chant to the forces of Ase, that to make things happen. Remember what I just said about law of attraction and all that stuff? It's about making things happen through your word. You call it into existence. Let's see. They have also called for the end of religious institutes, mainly Christianity. Anytime communism takes root, they attack Christians without fail. We are the light that shines power over the darkness. Why are Christians supporting this movement? It's a good question, but before I go into a little bit another zone, just want to show you this lie that was exposed through Candace Owens. I'm going to show you some other things.
This morning, I woke up to Candace Owens being outside of my house with a news crew. She was demanding that I come outside.
Hello. I was just looking to speak to whoever is at this property because it's listed as the Black Lives Matter property. Sir? Hello?
The fact that she's came outside my house and demanded things, harassed me, is unacceptable.
We're not trying to harass you. We'll gladly leave. We're just wondering if we can speak to anybody.
Y'all, I really need my family to be safe. I need to be safe. I need my child to be safe. And this, what happened this morning is not safety.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Oh my goodness. So here you see that she's bought a $6 million mansion within the 90 million that they got, and see this was a long article, but pretty much it exposes a lot of what she does. Oh, I would say they, because she'd probably be the scapegoat. Now all these funds went to her family and businesses within the family, so they want to keep it all in the family, right? So BLM wants to burn the whole system down and rebuild it in their own image. Do you ever wonder why they chant No borders, no walls, no USA at all. Other groups do it too, but they're one that they kind of say it another way. The burn of our cities, also called peaceful protest, for months on end, even during COVID, was allowed, and the police officers were told to stand down. While BLM cries out for social justice, the church continues to adopt Marxist ideology. And so this is Paul McGuire's book, A Prophecy of the Future of America. This was 2013. And he had some more to say here. I do not mean these words to be unkind. However, the world is in the greatest time of crisis we have ever known. We are in a spiritual state of emergency, and now it is not the time to mince words. One would think that Christian pastors would know the difference between Marxism and the teaching of Jesus Christ. But sadly, the percentage of theological sound Christian pastors who base their teachings on the Bible as the inspired and inherent word of God are dying off. Younger generations of leadership are now rising that have been dumbed down by the social engineering, and they have become pawns or useful idiots, which was a term coined by Bolshevik revolutionary Lenin. To describe those who can be manipulated and used through their naive idealism to bring about their destruction. I was watching film director Oliver Stone, who had directed such films as JFK, Platoon, W. Nixon, Savages, and many other films, talk very forcefully about younger generations of people in the media, film, and politics who he described as morons because they had absolutely no understanding of history and its vitally important lesson. Oliver Stone did not attempt to placate the younger generations in media and in culture. He said what angered him most was their arrogance about their historical stupidity. He looked into the camera with fire in his eyes. He said, I will not make movies for people who are deliberately stupid and act like arrogant teenage morons. Whether you agree with Stone's philosophy or not, the dumbed-down mentality is spread like a deadly virus among several generations of Christian leadership who arrogantly use terms like social justice when the term was invented by the Italian Marxist revolutionary Antonio Gramsci as a strategy allowing the government to make the church irrelevant and thus destroy it by taking care of the needs of the poor, which used to be something the church did throughout history. All right. If you don't fold to their ideology, they will call you an ist or a phobe. What that means is like misogynist, racist, homophobe, xenophobe, and on and on and on. The culprits that are incarcerated after committing violent acts and vandalism are released almost immediately and are never prosecuted. Who releases them? NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and politicians. Now, obviously, this isn't love, it's hate, because there's no discipline. These pawns are useful idiots. They will remain so unless the spell is broken. Black-on-black crimes are ignored, while in general they've in general increased over time, especially now since they're trying to defund police. It's obviously all of this is on purpose and agenda driven. A black person is more likely to get killed by another black person before they get killed by a cop. Okay, that's a statistical fact. Black abortions, they mention it. I'm gonna cut this short. 266 babies per day, not to mention the babies from other ethnic groups. So, before I touch critical race theory, Antifa cannot be ignored. Again, they were around in World War I, World War II. They have embedded themselves in America through money from George Soros again and others. They attended rallies, riots, protests, and more, and are usually right there next to BLM, and they all claim victimhood. There's a book you want to check out. I didn't put it in this presentation. It's called Black Rednecks and White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. You want to read that book. Very, very interesting. So critical theory is pretty much neo-Marxism. Critical race theory, coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989 as class consciousness, raising critical consciousness of race or strategic racism. Okay? Critical race theory, they've been trying to implement it since a very long time. Well, President Trump stopped it from being taught in our school the way it's being taught now, but it's been there for decades. It's just ramped up now, hyper. The faith of critical race theory is, in a nutshell, teaches that white people are racist from birth, and they can't help the way they are. So they're naturally the oppressors of any society that they're in, and the systemic racist system is there to benefit them alone. With this thought, the kids that are getting taught this are pretty much becoming racist themselves because they're thinking of another group as racist, but they're saying they're not racist, but they are racist because they're thinking of the other groups as racist. Okay? They want to persuade you, or rather yet wash your brain to believe that America is inherently racist, but only the white ones that helped found the country, this nation, and are the people that are the dominant population here. It's not that racism doesn't exist. The problem is it doesn't exist within the framework that they're setting up. The tapestry of racism in your mind, basically called a false narrative. White privilege, aka white ignorance, this is their terms now. They say white privilege means white ignorance, but white ignoring, you're ignoring the fact that you were born racist. That's what they're trying to say. So these next 13 points that I'm going to bring up, and I'm going to run through them fast because we're running out of time. This is James Lindsay. He's on our side, all right? And these are two of his books, Cynical Theories and Race Marxism. You need to pick them up. You need to pick them up. You need to pick them up. Okay? So these are 13 points. I can't define all of them, but some of them are pretty obvious. They believe that racism is ordinary and permanent in society. Acceptance of the interest convergence thesis of Derek Bell. He's a Marxist, and that's something kind of weird how to break that down. Belief in material determinism by racial categories. So they want to hyperfixate on race. Social constructs. Basically, they think race is a social construct and socially imposed and enforced. So that's why you are oppressed, because they socially impose it and enforce it. Okay? Belief in structural determinism by racial category. A unique voice of color, positional standpoint as epistemology. Storytelling, narrative weaving, and counter storytelling. So in the films, in the movies, TV shows, whatever, they're going to tell you stories that have nothing to do with reality, but they're going to make it reality. Okay? And another way they do it is through historical revisionism. Twist the story of Columbus, twist the story of anything in American history to make it their own. Destroy, rebuild. Okay? A critique of, let me see something. Okay, also in historical revisionism, there's a thing called the 1619 Project. Don't trust it. It's their work. And also the Lincoln Project. Okay, so a critique of liberalism and the very foundation of the liberal order. What this means, not all liberals are leftists. You got to kind of split the category. There's classic liberalism, then there are the liberals that lean left, all the way left. That's leftism. They want to redefine all of that, okay? Whiteness is a form of property. What they mean, oh boy, it's a lot of mental gymnastics, okay? Because you're white, and you are the property, but communism doesn't want anybody to own property, so they want all white people not to own any property, but you are a property. It makes no sense. I get it. But you have to look more into that definition anyway, right? Intersectionality and sensibilities, all things converge in a certain place, so you have to be sensible to them, whether it's sexuality or whatever else, blah, 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 right? Anti-racism as praxis. Anti-racism for them means critical race theorist. It doesn't mean what they say it means. And praxis pretty much means practice. So they want to practice critical race theory all the time. Okay? Critical whiteness studies. They got critical gender studies and all this stuff. It's all malarkey. All right? So these are just 13 points. There's a lot more. All right? So let's see here. Equality according to the term. Equality according to them is a conspiracy theory cooked up by white people and fooled people to think that they're equal, but they aren't in the eyes of their white oppressors. Yeah, make that run around your brain a little bit. So they also talk about accelerating the contradictions. This is from Lenin. And so leftism using the operating system of the Hegelian dialect, turn it on its head. Some of you have heard of Hegel. Some of you haven't. You might want to look up Hegel. So as we get closer to closing, I'm going to go into Hollywood and show you critical race theory in practice. So this is the movie Respect, about Aretha Franklin's life. And I'm just going to give you the beginning of the movie. There's a young girl, Aretha Franklin, as a child, and she's walking through a hallway at a house party, her dad's house. And so the first things that she hears are these. Communism is absolutely for the Negro. How else are we going to have everything we have ever wanted? Then she hears, you know, you're the finest looking cat in here, right? The guy says, I know that. And he says, what else you got? So basically, she got hit by two bombs. Communism is good, homosexuality is good. On the child. That's what that scene means. That's critical race theory. Okay? Next movie is The Batman. And there's not a lot to say here, but she's on a tall building with Batman, and she's going about her life, telling about her life and stuff like that. But anyway, she gets to the point where she gets silent, that she comes back and says, all anyone cares about in this place is these white privileged. She said something bad, but there it is, critical race theory in action. Okay? They have to supplant it in your mind, brainwash you to think that white people are privileged. All of us are privileged. And I'm telling you, they set it up so a lot of black people could have privilege through diverse hiring. They don't hire you because you're smart or you can get the job done. They hire you because you're black. That's hateful in my eyes. So as we close, goodness gracious. I really, it's so important to get all of this in before we leave, but I know I'm going a little over. The end game is destruction of the family, and they want to use women, the feminist women, to destroy the roles of men. But when they're finished doing that, they will destroy the women, because right now they're teaching in genetic theory that we won't need women anymore. Artificial wombs and all this stuff, it's coming. It's already here, actually. So they want to demonize women as well. This leads into transhumanism, transcendent from God's creation to another form of humanity. And then from that, it's into post-humanism, where there would be no humans. But the Bible doesn't tell us that's going to happen. So they'll fail. So Christianity is the heart of America, not Chevy trucks. We've allowed too many things to happen on our watch while we ignore it for the next generation to deal with. This is I'm going to go to a quote in a minute. So right now, I'm going to tell you about this thing called replacement. Not replacement theology, replacement of white people. Okay? It's in action right now through mass immigration. They use this in Japan and they use it in other countries. So this is the article. You can look it up if you want to write it down, if you want to remember it, you want to read this article. Because these quotes right here are from the article. All right? What does it say? We just have to be patient and wait for you to pass into the good night. Do you hear it? The sound of your empire dying, your nation as you knew it, ending permanently, because I do. And the sound of it its demise is beautiful. Next one, it's okay because in about 40 years, half the country will be black and brown. And there is nothing you can do about it. Nothing, Senor Tencredo. I don't know. Then the last one, where did anybody get the crazy ideas that Democrats are using immigration for electoral gains? From liberals. They've always been there. They're in other countries too. And they are seeking destruction for humanity. So, what one generation tolerates, the next generation will embrace. That is so true. Right? So, with all of these disgusting things, we need to pray. And not just pray to get rid of this thing. We don't know. God could be using it to bring forth the 7-year tribulation. I don't know. But we need to pray for the people caught up in this system, because some of them are your family members. I've had family members attack me. Oh, my goodness. You would think I shot their mom or something, you know? And especially I had a Trump shirt on, they just came after me. Savagely. We don't talk anymore since then. So pray for the people caught up in this thing. And just remember, if you have a friend that is about this, they're adherent to Satanism all the way, maybe not the way you think of Satanism, but it is Satanism. So in that sense, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for getting us through this study and enlightening anyone that needed to be enlightened, Lord God. And we ask that you let this word spread to warn individuals, protect the children, Lord God, and just foster a ecology of love in Jesus Christ, Lord God. Help us to get the word out, the gospel of Jesus Christ out, letting people know that Jesus Christ is the only way to the Father, only way to heaven, and we don't just stop existing after we die, Lord God, because there's a place called heaven and a place called hell, and we don't want anyone to go there, just like you don't, Lord God. So we ask you to bring us home safely and just to bear much fruit from this. In your name, Jesus.